She didn't realize she was being set up until her name showed up where it shouldn't have. Not in an email, not in a meeting, but on a decision she never made. And by the time she understood what they were doing, they had already built the story. They just needed her to take the fall. What they didn't expect was that she would tell the truth at the worst possible moment. Simone Rowe didn't become reliable because she loved being needed. She became reliable because she hated the feeling of things falling apart. Her mother used to say, half proud and half sad, "You're the kind of girl who would hold the ceiling up if you think everyone else needs it." Simone used to laugh at that. Now, at 34, she lived it. Brighton and Hale was the kind of company that called itself boutique the way a man called himself old school to justify being difficult. They marketed themselves as sleek, modern, high end, strategy first, story driven, results focused. Underneath, it ran on last minute chaos and quiet labor. Simone worked in operations, which meant she was the reason deadlines happened at all. She was the reason contracts didn't get missed, the reason deliverables didn't get lost, the reason clients didn't sue, the reason payroll didn't get delayed because someone forgot to submit a report. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, she was effective. And effectiveness was the most exploited trait in corporate America, right behind loyalty. Her desk sat near the center of the open floor, close enough that everyone could find her when needed help, far enough that no one had to see her exhaustion up close. Her monitor was always full of color-coded timelines. Her notebooks were filled with checklists. Her calendar had reminders for reminders. When people teased her for being organized, she smiled. But organization wasn't a personality trait. It was survival. Her boss, Michael Maddox, was the kind of man who thought his charisma was leadership. Michael was 42, tall, broad-shouldered, and always dressed like he was headed to a cocktail hour. He had a laugh that filled rooms and a handshake that made executives feel chosen. He spoke in confident absolutes. "We got it covered. It's handled. Trust me." Simone had learned to translate Michael's language. "We've got it covered" meant Simone will fix it. "It's handled" meant Simone will catch it before it breaks. "Trust me" meant don't ask questions. Michael liked Simone because she made him look good. Michael resented Simone because she made him feel replaceable. That was the secret tension between them. He needed her competence, but he hated that he needed it. Then there was Vivian Clark. Vivian was 32 and shaped like a Pinterest board. Everything about her looked curated. Hair always smooth, nails always neat, outfits always intentional. She spoke with a soft, careful voice that made even shady comments sound like compliments. Vivian worked in account management, which meant she handled the client experience, the smiles, the lunches, the "we're so excited to collaborate," the kind of relationship management that felt important because it was visible. Simone liked Vivian at first. Vivian laughed at Simone's jokes, remembered her coffee order, sent her memes during slow afternoons, called her a genius in front of people. "You're the glue," Vivian would say, leaning over Simone's desk. "If you ever quit, this whole place collapses." Simone would roll her eyes. "Ugh, stop." Vivian would grin. "I'm serious." It felt like admiration. Simone didn't realize admiration could be a leash. The trouble started with a client named Hartwell Medical. Hartwell was not just a contract. Hartwell was visibility. A major healthcare network launching a rebrand, a multi-million-dollar campaign with strict compliance requirements and high legal scrutiny. Winning Hartwell meant Brighton and Hale could expand, hire more staff, and, most importantly, impress Marjorie Hale herself. Marjorie Hale, co-founder and CEO, rarely got involved in day-to-day projects. When she did, people's voices changed. Spines straightened. Calendars cleared. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Disappointment from Marjorie felt like a stain you couldn't wash out. Michael walked into the ops area with a grin too wide. Big news, he announced, clapping once like a motivational speaker. We landed Hartwell. The office lit up. People cheered. Michael's gaze landed on Simone. Simone, you're on compliance and ops timeline. I need you locked in. Simone nodded. Of course. Vivian appeared beside Michael, smiling. This is huge, she murmured. We're going to crush it. Michael's eyes flicked to Vivian, then back to Simone. Vivian's leading client comms. Simone smiled politely. That made sense. Vivian was good with people. Michael leaned down slightly, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. This is the one, Simone. This is the account that gets us noticed. Simone's stomach nodded at the way he said us. Michael's success always came with invisible labor attached. Still, Simone felt a spark of pride. She loved hard projects. She loved complicated requirements that demanded precision. She loved building systems that held under pressure. She worked late that night, mapping compliance guardrails. She coordinated with legal. She created a document tracker and a permissions plan. She flagged risks. She built the kind of infrastructure that prevented disasters. Vivian came by her desk with 2 iced coffees. You're saving all of us, Vivian said, brightly, placing one beside Simone. Simone smiled tiredly. I'm just doing my job. Vivian, tilting her head, eyes warm. No, you're doing everyone's job. Simone's chest softened. It felt good to be seen. But later that night, as Simone was packing her bag, she overheard Vivian in the hallway on the phone. Vivian's voice was low, sweet. I know, she said, laughing softly. It's just, Michael doesn't want the ops girl in front of the client. He wants someone polished like me. Simone froze. Ops girl? Polished? Embarrassment burned through Simone. She waited, silent, as Vivian continued. I'm not saying she's not smart, Vivian said. She's just intense, like rules and spreadsheets. Hartwell needs vibe. Simone stood very still, heart pounding. Vivian's tone shifted, more intimate. Don't worry, I know how to handle it. Simone's fingers curled around her bag strap. She wanted to confront her, but confrontation would mean admitting she'd listened. And admitting she listened would mean Vivian could perform innocence. So, Simone walked away quietly. And that was the first time she let herself consider a terrifying thought. Vivian doesn't admire me. She studies me. The setup began with tiny exclusions. Not dramatic, not obvious, just strategic. Simone noticed she was no longer copied on certain emails. A meeting about Hartwell deliverable flow happened without her. She found out after the fact when someone referenced a decision she hadn't agreed to. When she asked Michael about it, he smiled like she was being silly. Oh, that was just a quick client-facing alignment, he said. No need to drag ops into it. Simone stared. Ops is the flow. Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes. Relax. You're still run the back end. Back end. Like she was the engine you didn't have to respect as long as the car moved. Then, one morning, Simone logged into the shared project system and got an error message. Access restricted. Simone blinked, refreshed, then tried again. Still locked. She messaged IT. An hour later, Simone's phone rang. It was Omar from IT. Hey, Simone, he said. His voice was careful. I got a request that didn't sit right with me. Her focus sharpened. On Hartwell? A pause. Yeah. Simone pushed from her desk. What kind of request? To change folder permissions, he said. Specifically, to remove your access to certain compliance subfolders. Simone's stomach dropped. That doesn't make sense. I built those folders. I know, Omar said quietly. That's why I'm calling instead of just executing it. Simone closed her eyes for a moment. So, this wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Who submitted it? She asked. Another pause, longer this time. Michael, Omar said. And before you ask, Vivian was CC'd. The room felt suddenly very still. Michael and Vivian. This wasn't a mistake. It was positioning together. Simone thanked Omar and walked straight into Michael's office. Michael looked up, smiling like a man who believed he controlled the narrative. Simone, he said warmly, come on in. Simone shut the door behind her. Her voice was calm, controlled. Why did you remove my access to Hartwell compliance folders? Michael blinked once, then smiled wider. Ah! Simone stared. Michael leaned back, hands folded. I need you on internal restructuring. Hartwell is, well, it's delicate. Simone's jaw went rigid. Delicate doesn't mean disorganized. Michael chuckled lightly. You're very detail heavy, Simone. Detail heavy is why we don't violate healthcare privacy law, Simone said. Michael's smile thinned. Sure, but Harwell's leadership wants a smoother touch. Vivian connects with them. She's more polished. Polished. There goes that word again. It tasted like an insult. Simone's voice stayed steady. Vivian doesn't know the compliance checklist. Michael waved a hand. She'll learn, and you'll support behind the scenes. Support behind the scenes. Simone held his gaze. Behind the scenes meant invisible. Behind the scenes meant disposable. Behind the scenes meant blamable. Simone cleared her throat. Michael, if my name remains attached to compliance, I need access to verify. Michael's eyes cooled slightly. Your name won't be attached. Simone just stared at him. It was a lie delivered smoothly. Simone didn't argue. She just nodded. Okay, she said quietly. Michael looked relieved. Great. I appreciate your flexibility. Simone opened the door and walked out. Vivian looked up from her desk and smiled brightly, like she'd been waiting. Everything okay? Vivian asked, eyes wide, voice sweet. Simone stared at her for a heartbeat too long. Then she said softly, It's fine. Vivian's smile grew. Good. Simone sat at her desk, hands trembling under the surface, and realized something with terrifying clarity. They weren't just pushing her out. They were positioning her. And when you're positioned in corporate politics, it's usually because someone plans to use you as a shield. Simone found out about the Hartwell presentation by accident. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a calendar invite. It was a junior analyst named Luca, 23, nervous, sweet, hovering near her desk like he was about to confess a crime. Simone? Luca asked. Simone looked up from her screen. Yeah? He scratched the back of his neck. Are you coming to the Hartwell presentation? Simone blinked. What presentation? Luca's eyes widened in panic. Oh, I thought you knew. Simone's stomach coiled slowly. When is it? In 10 minutes, Luca said, voice dropping to a whisper. Conference room A. Marjorie is there. The client's leadership team as well. The words hit like a slap. Marjorie Hale, the client leadership team. 10 minutes. Simone glanced at her calendar. Nothing. No invite, no mention, no, hey, just a heads up. She felt her face heat, but she forced her voice calm. Who's presenting? Luca hesitated, eyes darting. Michael and Vivian? Michael was the face, Vivian was the polish. That part was expected. What wasn't expected was being erased from the room where her work would be showcased. What's the agenda? Simone asked quietly. Luca looked down. Launch plan, compliance, safeguards, timeline. You know, the stuff you built. The stuff you built. Simone's pulse started pounding. If they were presenting her work without her, that was disrespectful. But if they were presenting compliance without her verifying it, that was dangerous. Simone stood. She didn't rush. She didn't slam a drawer or huff like she was offended. She moved with the calm of a woman walking into a room that belonged to her because it did. She grabbed her notebook, smoothed her cardigan, and walked towards conference room A. The closer she got, the more she could feel the energy shift. People in the hallway quieted as she passed. A few glanced up, curious. The glass walls of conference room A revealed the scene. Executives in tailored suits, Hartwell leadership in neat rows, laptops open. Marjorie at the head of the table, posture elegant and still. Michael stood beside the screen, smiling wide, performing confidence. Vivian sat at the table with her laptop, poised like she'd been born for boardrooms. Simone paused at the door for half a second, then pushed it open. Michael turned. His smile flickered like a dying light. Vivian's eyes widened, then narrowed, fast, before her expression settled into something bright and harmless. Marjorie looked up first. Simone. Not a question, not surprise, recognition. Simone nodded politely. Good afternoon, Marjorie. Marjorie's gaze sharpened slightly. I wasn't aware you were in today. Simone held herself steady. I am. I didn't receive the invite, but I'm responsible for ops compliance on Hartwell, so I assume I should be present. A beat of silence. Michael laughed lightly, like the room was witnessing an adorable misunderstanding. Oh, Simone, he said warmly. This one's client-facing. We're keeping attendance limited. Marjorie's eyebrow lifted a fraction. Simone didn't argue. She simply walked into an empty chair next to the side and sat down. She opened her notebook because this wasn't a social situation. This was operational. And operations didn't get to be selective when the stakes were legal. Vivian cleared her throat and began. Good afternoon, Vivian said, voice smooth as silk. We're thrilled to present our launch framework for Hartwell Medical's rebrand. We've structured this in phases to ensure full compliance, seamless delivery, and an exceptional patient-facing experience. Slide 1 appeared. Phases. Slide 2. Timeline. Slide 3. Deliverables. Vivian was polished, yes. She spoke well. She smiled at the right moments. She made eye contact with the client team like she was selling them a future. But Simone could see it immediately. Tiny cracks in the language. Vivian didn't know the process. She knew how to talk around it. Then Vivian clicked to the compliance slide, and Simone felt her entire body go cold. The slide read, Compliance verification completed. Signed off by Operations Lead Simone Rowe. Simone's throat closed. She stared at her name on the screen as if it were a stranger's, because it was being used like a shield. Vivian continued, voice confident. Our operations lead has confirmed that all compliance requirements were met and documented, including data privacy safeguards and audit-ready tracking. Simone's pulse pounded. She hadn't confirmed anything. They had removed her access. They had removed her from the process. And now her name was on the slide presented to the CEO and the client's leadership team. Michael smiled beside the screen. Yes, Simone's always incredible. She keeps us safe. Safe. They were using the language of safety to hide a lie. Marjorie's gaze moved to Simone, quiet and sharp. Simone kept her face neutral. She could feel the trap closing. If the client asked a technical compliance question and Vivian failed, they would blame ops. If the client later found a gap, they would point to the slide, to Simone. The CFO spoke first, voice crisp. Vivian, can you clarify the patient data protection measures? Specifically, how is access restricted and logged? Vivian blinked. Simone saw the panic flash, just for a second, before Vivian forced a smile. Yes, Vivian said quickly. We follow standard procedures. The CFO's expression didn't change. Which ones? Vivian's lips parted. We use encryption. Marjorie leaned forward slightly. The room went still. The Hartwell legal counsel, an older woman with silver hair pulled into a bun, tilted her head. Encryption where? At rest? In transit? Both? Vivian's eyes darted to Michael. Michael cleared his throat, stepping in. We have safeguards in place. Robust safeguards. Marjorie's voice was calm, which made it dangerous. Name them. Michael's smile faltered. Simone's heart hammered. This was it. This was the moment. She could save them. She could answer the question. She could protect the company and the client and everyone's jobs. But if she answered, she'd be protecting the lie that her compliance sign-off existed. And worse, she'd be consenting to being used. Simone watched Vivian swallow hard, watched Michael's face set, watched Marjorie's eyes harden. Then Simone spoke, voice steady. The safeguards are an encrypted portal for patient-related assets, restricted access permissions by role, and audit logs that track user access and file movement. The CFO looked relieved, faintly. The Hartwell counsel nodded once. Michael's shoulders relaxed, like Simone had saved him, as usual. But Simone wasn't done. She continued calmly, tone still professional. However, I do need to clarify something. My access to the Hartway compliance folders was reduced 2 weeks ago, so I did not approve final verification and did not sign off. Silence slammed into the room. It wasn't just quiet. It was stunned. Michael's face went white. Vivian's eyes widened, too bright. Marjorie's gaze sharpened like a blade. Reduced by whom? Michael laughed weakly. Simone, this isn't the time. Marjorie cut him off with one word. Answer. Michael swallowed. It was a strategic decision. Marjorie's voice remained calm. Strategic for what? Michael's mouth opened, then closed. Vivian jumped in, voice sweet, urgent. We were just streamlining. Marjorie turned her gaze to Vivian. Streamlining compliance by removing your obsolete from access? Vivian's lips trembled. Marjorie looked back at Simone. Did you sign off on compliance? Simone's voice was flat. No. Michael's jaw clenched. Simone! Simone didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply stated, my name appears on that slide, but I did not authorize it. I also did not have full access to confirm final documentation. Marjorie stared at Michael and Vivian for a long moment. Then she said, end the meeting. Michael stammered, Marjorie, now. Michael closed the laptop too hard. Chairs scraped. People filed out, murmuring in low voices. The Hartwell counsel didn't look at Michael again. The CFO didn't look at Vivian. Marjorie didn't look at anyone until the room was nearly empty. Simone remained seated, heart pounding, because she had just done the one thing that always carried risk. She spoke truth in a room that wanted a performance. When the last of the client team left, Michael turned on her. His face twisted with rage, raw, ugly, stripped of charisma. What the hell was that? He hissed. Simone's eyes stayed steady. The truth? Vivian's face crumpled instantly. Tears spilled fast, theatrical. Simone, why would you do that? You embarrassed us. Simone's mouth twitched. You embarrassed yourselves. Michael stepped closer, voice low and furious. You made us look incompetent. Simone stood slowly. You made yourselves incompetent when you removed the one person who understood compliance. Vivian sniffed, voice shaking. We trusted you. Simone let out a short, bitter laugh. No, you used me. Michael's eyes flashed. Go home. Simone blinked. Excuse me? Michael's voice sharpened. You're suspended pending review. HR will contact you. Simone felt her stomach drop. Suspended for telling the truth. Vivian wiped her tears with trembling fingers. I think you need to calm down. Simone just stared at her. Vivian's eyes were glossy, victim-ready. Michael pointed toward the door. Go. Simone picked up her notebook, hand steady, even though her heart felt like it might tear through her ribs. Okay, she said quietly, and walked out. Simone didn't cry in the bathroom. She waited until she was in her car, door shut, alone. Then the tears came, hot and angry. Not because she was weak, because humiliation is a bodily experience. It burns your skin, it locks your throat, it makes your hands shake like your nervous system is screaming. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Michael, you are suspended pending investigation. Do not access company systems. Her stomach churned. Then a message from Vivian. Vivian, why would you do that? We could have handled it privately. Handled it privately meant blame Simone quietly. Simone stared at the screen until the words blurred. Her phone buzzed again. Another Vivian message. Vivian, you always do this. You always have to be right. Simone laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Always have to be right, as if compliance was about ego, as if not wanting to be framed for fraud was arrogance. Simone drove home on autopilot. She walked into her apartment and dropped her bag by the door like she didn't recognize her own life. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink, and realized something terrifying. If she did nothing, they would shape the narrative. They would tell HR she was insubordinate. They would tell executives she was unstable. They would tell the client she was a rogue employee. They would tell everyone that the real issue wasn't Ford's sign-off, that it was Simone's tone. Because tone is what people accuse you of when they can't argue facts. Simone wiped her face, took a slow breath, and opened her laptop. Not her work laptop. She wasn't stupid. Her personal one. And she did what competent women did when the world tried to smear them. She built a record. Simone created a folder titled Hartwell Timeline. Inside, she made subfolders, access changes, emails and calendar, meeting notes, screenshots, witnesses, HR and legal. She searched her email for permissions, Hartwell, compliance, restricted, access, Vivian, Michael. She found the old chain from weeks earlier where Simone had asked Michael to confirm compliance steps and he'd respond vaguely. She found meeting invites that had been updated and she'd been removed. She pulled calendar logs showing she wasn't invited to the presentation. She opened her notes and wrote down everything she remembered. The moment Omar said Michael requested access removal. The moment Omar said Vivian was CC'd. The meeting where Michael called her detail-heavy. The exact phrase, support from behind the scenes. Then she called Omar. He answered on the second ring. Simone, he said quietly. I heard what happened. Simone's voice was calm, deliberate. Omar, I'm not asking you to break policy. I'm just asking you to confirm. Who requested the permission change and when? Omar hesitated. It was Michael, 2 weeks ago. And Vivian was CC'd? Omar sighed. Yes. Did you get the ticket? Simone asked. Yes. Simone closed her eyes, relief and rage mixing. Okay, thank you. Omar hesitated again. Simone, they're saying you. Simone cut in gently. I know what they're saying. Omar's voice softened. I'm sorry. Simone sighed. Me too. She hung up and stared at her laptop. Her hands were no longer shaking. They were steady. Because proof does something to your spine. It straightens it. Then she did the next step. She called an employment attorney, Matthew Cole, not because she wanted drama, but because she could feel the danger. Attorney Cole listened for 10 minutes and then asked one question. Was your name used without your authorization in a compliance context? Simone's voice was flat. Yes. And can you prove you lacked access to verify? The attorney pressed. Simone's eyes narrowed. Yes. Cole's tone shifted, sharper, more focused. Then this isn't just office politics, he said. This is fraud risk and retaliation. Retaliation. Simone exhaled slowly. That word meant she wasn't crazy. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't paranoid. She was targeted. And suddenly, the humiliation in that conference room didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of their downfall. HR scheduled the meeting for Friday morning. Not a call, not an email discussion, a meeting. The subject line read, Performance Review and Conduct Discussion. Simone stared at the words and felt a familiar chill. Language like that wasn't neutral. It was strategic. She forwarded the invite to her lawyer immediately. His response came back within minutes. Do not attend alone. I'll join. Also, do not sign anything. Simone exhaled slowly. When the Zoom meeting opened, HR appeared first. Two people, both overly pleasant in different ways. Elaine Porter, lead HR partner, smiled too smoothly. Noah Patel, compliance, barely smiled at all. Michael wasn't there. Vivian wasn't there. That absence wasn't kindness. It was insulation. Thank you for joining, Simone, Elaine said warmly. We want to talk about what happened in the Hartwell meeting. Simone nodded once. Okay. Elaine folded her hands. Several people felt your behavior was disruptive and unprofessional. Simone said nothing. Silence was power when someone was trying to bait you. Elaine cleared her throat. You accused your colleagues publicly without following internal processes. Attorney Cole unmuted calmly. She corrected misinformation involving regulatory compliance. That is not misconduct. Elaine blinked. We weren't aware you had counsel present. The lawyer's voice stayed level. You are now. Elaine's tone sharpened. We're trying to understand Simone's intent. Her intent, Attorney Cole replied evenly, was to avoid fraudulent representation to a client and the CEO. No one leaned forward slightly. Are you alleging fraud? Simone finally spoke, her voice calm and precise. My name was placed on a compliance sign-off I did not authorize, she said. That occurred after my system access was removed. That is not an allegation. That is a fact. Silence. Noah glanced down at his notes. We've also received reports, Elaine added carefully, that you've been difficult to work with lately. Attorney Cole smiled faintly. Define difficult. Elaine hesitated. Challenging authority, insisting on processes. The lawyer nodded once. In healthcare compliance, that's called competence. Elaine tried again. Would you be willing to acknowledge that your approach may have escalated the situation? There it was, the trap. Simone leaned forward slightly. No, she said calmly, because acknowledging that would be untrue. Elaine's smile faltered. Attorney Cole added, we are formally requesting preservation of all internal records related to Hartwell Medical, including access logs, email correspondence, and file edit histories. The room shifted. Preservation notices weren't threats, they were warnings. Elaine swallowed. We'll review. Simone ended the call feeling something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not fear, certainty. Hartwell Medical didn't wait. 3 days after the presentation, Brighton and Hale received formal notice. Hartwell was initiating an external audit, compliance, access control, documentation integrity. That phrase, documentation integrity, was corporate code for someone lied. Executives panicked quietly because audits didn't just expose mistakes, they exposed patterns. IT was instructed to pull logs, not summaries, raw data. Who accessed what? Who removed permissions? Who edited files? Who added names? Who approved changes? The timeline formed itself. Michael requested Simone's access reduction. Vivian was CC'd. Vivian edited the compliance slide. Simone's name was added after her access was removed. Michael presented the slide as verified. No ambiguity, no plausible deniability, just fingerprints. Marjorie Hale reviewed the findings alone first. Then, she called Michael into her office. The door closed, and for the first time in years, Michael didn't come out smiling. Vivian was called in next. She cried immediately. She claimed pressure. She hinted Michael encouraged her. She framed herself as young, overwhelmed, trying to please leadership. Marjorie listened without interrupting, then asked one question. Did you add Simone Rowe's name to the compliance slide knowing she did not approve it? Vivian hesitated too long. Marjorie nodded once. That was all she needed. Brighton and Hale didn't fire Michael immediately. They did something worse. They removed his authority. He lost client-facing privileges. He lost leadership meetings. He lost decision-making power. Executives stopped CCing him. When he spoke in meetings, people asked him to follow up in writing. The laughter dried up. Michael wasn't disgraced publicly. He was neutralized. Vivian's fall was quieter and more personal. Her credibility evaporated. People stopped asking for her input. Clients began requesting someone else. The women who once laughed with her now kept conversations short, polite, and brief. Vivian built her identity on being liked. Now, she was merely endured. That kind of social karma eats you alive slowly. And then the settlement talks began. Brian and Hale offered Simone money. First, a small amount, then more, then enough to make their fear obvious. Simone's lawyer negotiated hard, not just for compensation, but for language. No admission of wrongdoing, standard, but no gag clause preventing Simone from speaking factually, and a clean separation agreement. Simone sighed. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt finished. Finished with shrinking. Finished with being the safety net for people who didn't respect her. Finished with environments that mistook silence for weakness. She took a month off, not to heal dramatically, just to breathe. Then she started consulting, compliance audits, risk prevention, operational rebuilds. Companies paid very well for people who prevented disasters before they became lawsuits. Simone's calendar filled faster than it ever had at Brighton and Hale. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was essential by choice. A year later, Simone attended an industry networking event. Not flashy, not performative, just professionals exchanging cards in quiet ambition. She stood with a small group discussing audit readiness when she felt it. That awareness. She turned. Michael stood across the room. He looked diminished. Not older, just smaller in presence. Vivian stood near him, laughing too loudly, scanning faces for validation that no longer came. They saw Simone. Michael stiffened. Vivian's smile faltered. Michael approached first, slow, cautious. Simone, he said quietly, you look, well. Simone smiled politely. I am. Michael swallowed. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Simone's gaze stayed steady. Yes, you did. Michael flinched. No, Simone spoke once, calmly. You meant for it to benefit you, she said. You just didn't expect consequences. Vivian stepped closer, eyes glassy, voice rushing to catch up. I was just under so much pressure. Simone didn't raise her voice. She didn't even sound disappointed. Then you should have chosen integrity. Vivian faltered. I admired you. Simone nodded, almost absently. You studied me. That landed harder than accusation ever could. Michael exhaled sharply, anger leaking through restraint. I lost everything. Simone tilted her head, considering him for a moment. No, she said. You just lost access. The room went still. Simone stepped back, already disengaging. I wish you well. And truly, she meant it. Not kindly, not cruelly, neutrally. She walked back into the room where people greeted her warmly, where her presence wasn't questioned, where her competence wasn't threatened. Later that evening, Simone stood alone on the terrace, city lights stretching beneath her. A man she'd been talking with earlier, Evan, quiet, thoughtful, sharp without arrogance, joined her. You handled that with grace, he said gently. Simone smiled. Experience. Evan nodded. You don't look angry. Simone thought for a moment. I'm not, she said. I used to think anger meant strength. Turns out, clarity is stronger. Evan smiled softly. I'd like to get a coffee sometime. No pressure. Simone hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. She looked out over the city and felt it settle. Not victory, not revenge. Something better. Security. They thought removing her from the room would make her powerless. They thought using her name would protect them. But the truth didn't need permission to exist. And when it finally spoke, it didn't destroy her. It destroyed them. If you were in Simone's position, would you have stayed quiet and protected them? Or would you have done what she did? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.